as they sprout at the edge of stems, on branches, on the trees, out my window in my bourgeois existence. Show me the woo way.
This is Alexandra Tercy
and Martin Van Rijkenvorsel
of Maple Jam, broadcasting from the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV LP Burlington, streaming online at 993wbtv.org.
From the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont, this is 99.3 FM, WBTV FM. Streaming online at 993wbtv.org. And this program is made possible in part by Burlington Telecom's Lifeline program, promoting a digitally inclusive community by helping Burlington residents afford the internet tools they need to reach their full potential. Learn more at burlingtontelecom.com. And here comes Steve Lab.
Topics related to science,
technology,
engineering,
art,
and the mathematics. Our mission is to entertain, engage, and educate the Burlington community.
No! The world!
That was pretty good.
This microphone is making me mad. It's making me mental. Sheila.
Hello, Philip.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Steam Lab. We weren't here last week. We had a repeat episode.
That's okay. Oldie but goodie.
It was all about amusement parks and stuff. Oh, gosh. I don't know if the sounds
Is that
are
when we talked about Santa's Land?
That's correct. And there was
Christmas in July.
There's the creepy Santa. Yes. How could we forget? Lest we forget the creepy Santa.
Great episode.
Yeah, and Kyle overproduced a bunch of stuff, which was great.
It was like
time.
Radiolab.
Kind of, yeah. I would totally agree with that. Well, we have kind of an interesting episode tonight. I'm excited for.
So excited for.
I am. Amelia helped me pick it out. If I could get this microphone to agree with me.
Yeah, so just to introduce it a little, I was in Peace Corps in Bangladesh, and I kept getting asked this question: do you like Titanic? Do you like Titanic? And I thought it was some local cultural thing that I was missing. I didn't understand what it was, so I asked my Bengali teacher, what's Titanic? And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, it's the greatest movie of all time. And I was like, what? And he goes, Leonardo DiCaprio and the boat is sinking?
Yes.
And I said, you mean Titanic? So everyone kept asking me if I liked the movie Titanic.
Right.
Because it was one of the only first movies from Hollywood to be translated, to be dubbed in Bengali.
So
the entire country of Bangladesh has seen it.
They lose their mind over it.
They love it.
So that's our topic for this evening.
Titanic.
Yeah, and it was kind of prompted by Amelia, the 8-year-old. She said, you really should talk about the Titanic. And she was way into it. I was impressed with her.
She did a lot of research.
Yeah, she was totally into it. By the way, this is Steam Lab, and we are live on YouTube. We're also on VCam, so if you're watching us, it's Kyle's big joke, at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday.
We're there.
We're there. We're also in prime time on VCam. And we're here in the Media Factory, which is a great place to be. Lots of things happening here. I'll talk about all that stuff later. But we're going to talk about the luxury ship, the RMS Titanic. And it sank in the early hours of the morning on April 15th, 1912. By the way, 1912 was a busy year. There was a lot of stuff going on.
What was happening?
The Olympics, World War I was still kind of, it was the beginnings of it. There's stuff was going on. 1912 was a busy year. So, of the 2,240 passengers and crew on board, more than 1,500 people lost their lives. And kind of unnecessarily so. And we're going to talk about that. Titanic, as you had already said, has inspired countless books, movies, television specials. And it's really entered the public's consciousness as this cautionary tale about the perils of being a little overconfident with our technology.
That's well put. And I think up until the other day, I thought I knew a lot about
Sure.
the story of the Titanic.
Right.
Until Amelia kind of imposed some new knowledge on me.
However, I would say her knowledge is conspiracy based, and some of those things have been debunked. But she's getting interested in the topic.
Yeah.
But I think it appeals to your nature of conspiracy theories.
What are you saying, Philip?
I'm saying that you were raised by John Cooley. He's a conspiracy theorist. So,
They're listening.
yes, I'm sure. I'm sure they are. Anyways, you can interact with us on Facebook, facebook.com/SteamLabVT. And I would say Twitter, but I never go there. I just don't. We will eventually.
Wah, wah.
So if you're a twit head or whatever. So the building of the RMS Titanic, RMS stands for Royal Mail Steamer, and it's the Titanic, and it was the product of intense competition. And really, this is a little apropos when we think of the 737 MAX, right, which is a product of Boeing. It was also a product of competition between Boeing and Airbus.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the same situation. In particular, the White Star Line, which found itself in a battle for steamship-like supremacy over a company known as Cunard Mauritania, which were both these big British firms, and they had standout ships that ranked among the most sophisticated and luxurious of the time. And I mean, like, time is money.
Yeah, time is money. And I would also say those passages coming across was not comfortable in 1912.
No.
I mean, miserable experience.
Sure, unless you were rich, of
And
course.
then these boats started having a luxury class.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, this doesn't have to be so miserable.
Sure. The Titanic had a heated swimming pool. Mm-hmm. It had a gymnasium. It had a ballroom. I mean, this was
Yeah.
luxury traveling.
Yeah.
And it cost $7.5 million to build in 1912,
That's a lot of money.
which in today's dollars, I think is like around $450 million.
It's a chunk of change.
Big dough. Big dough.
Yeah, and then how much does a ticket cost? You know, like,
Sure.
how are they going to pay that back? Make the money.
Right. Well, it's competition. Who can get there the fastest? And so this was the product of this competition. It's the Titanic's maiden voyage from all the way in Europe, from England to New York City, which that's always been kind of a thing. How fast can we
yeah.
get you from London to New York City?
Well, the plane that we saw down in D.C. That was
Concorde.
The Concorde.
Yeah, the Concorde.
Yeah.
That was what that was all about.
That
Supersonic
was years
flight.
later, but
Supersonic flight.
yeah.
And that plane could go almost Mach
London
3.
to New York. That's what they all wanted, right?
London to New York in like a couple hours,
2.5 hours, yeah.
and you were there. So this title was held by Cunard's Mauritania, and I think the fastest transatlantic crossing was 23 knots or 27 and a half miles per hour, and that title was held for 22 years. Cunard's other masterpiece, the Lusitania, launched the same year and also had this beautiful interiors. And the Lusitania met another tragic end in May of 1915, and when a German U-boat sunk it That's what kind of got the United States involved in World War One.
It all comes back.
Sort
all
of.
circles together.
Kind of.
And how do we relate this to Minnesota?
I haven't gotten to Minnesota yet.
Okay.
Don't worry.
We know it's coming.
For your information,
All you steamers out there, you know.
there's nothing on the Titanic specifically, but interesting you bring it up.
I know.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Did you know passengers traveling first class on Titanic were roughly 44% more likely to survive than other passengers? Just because they had such access to the boats, the life rafts, right? So all the other passengers were on the below decks, so they didn't even have access.
No, well, they didn't. They didn't have enough boats, lifeboats.
That's right.
They
didn't
they looked cluttered on the deck.
That's right.
So they got rid of them.
They only had enough life rafts on the Titanic for roughly half the passengers.
And then the initial ones they launched were only partially full.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Okay,
we're gonna talk about that stuff.
I mean,
so we're just talking about the
Shocking.
construction of this thing. So basically, there's all this competition between Cunard, or whatever the name of the company is, and the White Star Line, and they have construction of these ships. And the White Star had this Olympic class of liners. You know, each ship was like 882 feet long, 92 feet wide, and the work on these ships was just massive. Thousands of people were working on this. 15,000 people worked on the Titanic, and a couple people even died during construction.
Yeah.
You know, there's no OSHA.
I was
back
going
then,
to say there was no OSHA back then. There's no labor laws
or whatever it's called in Britain, right?
Yeah.
And so this hull that was built in 1911, May of 1911, Titanic's immense hull, the largest movable man-made object in the world at the time, made its way down the slipways and into the river Lagan. Is that how I pronounce it in Belfast? You're Irish.
Belfast is
Lagan?
not in Ireland.
Oh, it's in Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Sorry.
I'm in the Republic of Ireland with you.
Yes, you're correct. More than 100,000 people attended the launching, which took just over a minute and went off without a hitch. The hull was immediately towed to a mammoth fitting out dock where thousands of workers would spend most of the next year building the ship's decks, constructing the lavish interiors, installing the 29 giant boilers that would power the two main steam engines. So Titanic, before it even launched, was hailed as the dream ship. It was hailed as unsinkable.
Which is one of those things where you just want to knock on wood. Like, who decided, let's say it's unsinkable.
The main designer said that
You're just setting yourself up for failure there.
even God couldn't sink Titanic.
Ouch.
And I'm sure God was like, hey, hold my beer. Okay. According to some hypothesis, Titanic was doomed from the start by a design that many lauded as state of the art. The Olympic-class ships featured a double bottom and 15 watertight bulkhead compartments equipped with electric watertight doors that could be operated individually or simultaneously by a switch on a bridge. And so, basically, it was set up almost like an ice cube tray, right?
A great analogy.
That's what it was. It was basically just this big ice cube tray with all these individual compartments. The problem, of course, is that as these individual compartments would fill up, water's got to go somewhere. It had to. And they weren't watertight. So as it would fill, it was the critical factor in Titanic sinking, the watertight compartment design.
So what happened as they filled up?
While the individual bulkheads were indeed watertight, the walls separating the bulkheads extended only a few feet above the waterline. So water could pour from one compartment into another.
Oh, no.
Especially if the ship began to list or pitch forward.
Which is exactly what it's going to do when it
So
starts
that's why
filling with water.
That's why I said it's like an ice cube tray.
Yeah.
Because it may have been watertight, but water could still get over the top.
What? It's not watertight. It's a terrible...
It's not three-dimensional.
No.
The second critical safety lapse that contributed to the loss of so many lives was the number of lifeboats carried on Titanic. A mere 16 boats. 16 boats.
Oh, yeah. That's...
And they had 4 what was known as collapsibles.
I was going to say, I thought it was 20. I'm so glad you said the 4 there.
But that could accommodate just 1,178 people. And Titanic could carry up to 2,435 passengers. And a crew of approximately 900 brought her to a capacity of like 3,300 people. So as a result, even if the lifeboats were full, loaded to capacity during an emergency evacuation, there were available seats for only 1/3 of those on board, which is kind of what happened.
Well, and actually way less because the initial boats sent out had like less than half full.
Right. We're going to get to that.
Okay, I know.
Yeah, it's ridiculous though,
just
right?
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. By the way, you're listening to STEAM Lab, Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics on 993 FM, WBTV LP in Burlington. So the passengers on the Titanic created quite a stir when it departed for its maiden voyage from Southampton, England in April of 1912, April 10th. So we're 5 days away from that faithful night. So after stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, known as Cobb, Ireland. Is that Republic of?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I was watching. The ship set sail for New York with 2,240 passengers and a crew or souls, the expression then used in shipping industry, usually in connection with a sinking on board, as befitting the first transatlantic crossing of the world's most celebrated ship. Many of these souls were high-ranking officials. I mean, there's a lot of rich people. It was like a big party. You know, it's the first time the ship is going somewhere. And so, first and foremost was the White Star Line's managing director, J. Bruce Ismay, accompanied by Thomas Andrews, who was the shipbuilder from Harland and Wolff. Absent was the financier, J.P. Morgan. He was not there. He was supposed to be, but he was like, oh, I can't make it. I got other things to do. Lucky. So, whose International Mercantile Marine Shipping Trust controlled the White Star Line and who had selected Ismay as a company officer. Morgan had planned to join his associates on Titanic but canceled at the last minute when some business matters delayed him. The wealthiest passenger was John Jacob Astor, heir to the Astor family fortune, who had made waves a year earlier by marrying an 18-year-old named Madeline Talmadge Force, a young woman 29 years his junior, shortly after divorcing his first wife. So, you know, I mean, you get some superstars aboard. I mean, some famous people.
And some intrigue.
A little intrigue. Yeah, sure. It's kind of like the movie.
Yeah.
Titanic. Other notable passengers included elderly owners of Macy's, Isidore Strauss, and Benjamin Guggenheim, accompanied by his mistress. They don't make any compunctions about that one. And widow and heiress Margaret Molly Brown, who's known as, she'd earned her unsinkable nickname by helping to maintain calm and order while the lifeboats were being loaded and boosting the spirits of her fellow survivors. The employees attending to this collection of first-class souvenirs were mostly traveling second class, along with academics, tourists, journalists, and others who would enjoy a level of service and accommodations equivalent to first class on most other ships. It really was. Mm-hmm. It really was.
Yeah.
I feel like James Cameron's movie is pretty...
They worked very hard to
accurate.
Make it accurate. Yeah, I think so.
Right. So some passengers paid less than $20 to make the crossing. It was third class. That was the major source of profit for shipping lines like White Star, and Titanic was designed to offer these passengers accommodations and amenities superior to those found in third class on any other ship of the area.
I wonder what $20 is equivalent to today, because, I mean, $20 can't get you an Uber ride across Burlington.
I don't know. It's probably like $100.
Wow.
I don't know.
It's like a Greyhound ride to Boston.
Yeah, pretty much. But that was a big moneymaker.
You could take the ferry to New York.
Because they just were stuffing people in there like sardines, you know?
Yeah.
They're just stuffing them in there.
Yeah.
And this was also, you know, this era where, you know, people were really poor in Europe. Europe was not a good place to live.
Yeah.
And so everyone was like, you got to go to the New World. You got to go to the New World. Like, that's where you have to go. And that's what these people did. I think now might be a good time to take a little break.
Okay. I'm looking forward to the next section.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got more to talk about the disaster.
Yeah.
And kind of give you a little...
A little teaser?
Little teaser. Later in the show, we're going to discuss the finding of the Titanic
Oh, yeah.
by Dr. Robert Ballard in 1985. And that is a super fascinating story, by the way,
Cool.
I would say. You're going to be interested in that for sure. But let's listen to a little music, and we'll come back. Welcome back to STEAM Lab, Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. And this week, we're talking about Titanic. It's an interesting story. People are obsessed with it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just the same way people are obsessed with the royalty in England, they're also obsessed with Titanic.
Yeah.
There's like a following.
Yeah, an obsession almost.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd also say it's a very fascinating story. I mean, a lot of individual stories are really interesting, but the overall arching story, it's just so tragic.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. And a lot of it was preventable, you know?
Yeah.
But that's what happens. I mean, most tragic situations, there's a chain of events that occurs. It's not just one thing, you know, that like...
What we call a catastrophic failure, usually.
Yeah. It's not just one thing.
Rarely is it a catastrophic
It's
failure.
a chain of events. And in this situation, it was a chain of events. It wasn't just the iceberg.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like,
That
oh,
was just the tip.
it was the nose of the camel. So Titanic departs from Southampton on April 10th, and there were some oddities. Some stuff happened, and this was the thing that Amelia was talking about. A small coal fire was discovered in one of the bunkers, which was not an alarming. It was alarming, but it wasn't an uncommon occurrence on steamships of the day. Some of the stokers, the guys in the bottom of the boat, they hosed down the smoldering coal and shoveled it aside to reach the base of the blaze. So, you know, after assessing the situation, the captain and chief engineer concluded that it was unlikely it had caused any damage that could affect the hull structure, and the stokers were ordered to continue controlling the fire at sea. So there was a fire in the bottom of the boat.
And that could change the metallurgy, right?
Yeah,
the,
it could. It
the
could.
strength of the metal.
Absolutely. And so there's a theory that because of this fire, the bottom of the ship, and this might be a piece of information a lot of people don't know, that it...
I didn't know until Amelia told me.
Yes, correct. It weakened, and it was in the area where the boat hit the iceberg on the starboard side.
What are the chances?
I know, right? So, and this is a theory put forth by a small number of Titanic experts. The fire became uncontrollable after the ship left Southampton, forcing the crew to attempt a full-speed crossing. Moving at such a fast pace, they were unable to avoid the fatal collision with the iceberg. I don't know if that's totally true. I don't know.
I mean, I believe it. a massive fire, really bad luck that it hits right in the same spot. But
Right.
they also could have been like, hey, we need to delay the
Let's slow down.
departure.
Let's take a look at this.
But they didn't. They didn't want to
Well,
do that. A lot of political
There were
pressure.
there were a lot of journalists on board. Yeah. There was a lot of coverage. And there was a lot of this White Star Line,
All right.
you know.
A lot of pressure.
Another unsettling event took place when Titanic left the dock. As she got underway, she narrowly escaped a collision with the America Lines SS New York. So,
Oh, boy. We haven't even got out of the harbor.
know.
We're already getting into an accident.
superstitious Titanic buffs sometimes point to this as the worst kind of omen for a ship departing on her maiden voyage.
I'm not going to worry about the omen. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, superstition.
Superstition.
No, I don't get into that either.
No.
But some people do.
Yeah.
Maybe you're hearing this and you're going, "Oh man, yeah, wow." So
Black cat walked
Right.
in front of me.
that does nothing.
Yeah.
On April 14th, after 4 days of uneventful sailing, Titanic received sporadic reports of ice from other ships, but she was sailing on calm seas under a moonless, clear sky. Titanic is a huge ship. I mean, it's as big as a building.
Oh, yeah.
It's this huge ship. I mean, it's like almost as big, as tall as the Empire State Building. So, but they were like, we gotta win this race.
Okay, so calm, clear night, yes, but then there was a fog,
A little bit.
right?
No, I think it was pretty calm.
No fog.
I haven't heard that one.
Oh,
But
yeah, fog. And this is something Amelia told me. There's no binoculars on
interesting.
the ship because
Interesting.
the guy with the key to the cabinet where the binoculars were stored got fired the day before they left port,
Oh wow.
and he never handed the key off to the next person.
So nobody had binoculars.
So nobody had binoculars.
Oh, my
The
goodness.
lookouts did not have binoculars.
Hey.
This is from Amelia Peterson.
And you know
Expert
what?
extraordinaire.
She's from the mouths of babes. So about 11:30 p.m., a lookout saw an iceberg coming out of a slight haze dead ahead.
A lookout without binoculars.
Right. Then rang the warning bell and telephoned the bridge. The engines were quickly reversed and the ship was turned sharply. Instead of making direct impact, Titanic seemed to graze along the side of the iceberg on the starboard side, or what people know as the right side, sprinkling ice fragments on the forward deck. And it didn't really seem to affect anyone on the ship. Everybody was like, we averted disaster.
Yeah.
We averted disaster. Sensing no collision, the lookouts were relieved. They had no idea that the iceberg had jagged underwater spur, which slashed a 300-foot gash in the hull below the ship's waterline. By the time the captain toured the damaged area with Thomas Andrews, who was the designer of the 5 compartments that were already filling with seawater, the bow of the doomed ship was already pitching downward. And they had tried to slow down. They went to half speed. And I mean, at this point, like millions of gallons of seawater was pouring into the bulkhead and into the neighboring compartments. Andrews did a quick calculation and estimated that Titanic might remain afloat for an hour and a half, perhaps slightly more. So he already knew.
He knew it's happening. This is it.
Zet.
Ship's done.
Zet. And at this point, the captain, who had already instructed his wireless operator to call for help, ordered the lifeboats to be loaded. And then he just stayed right next to the ship's steering wheel. What do you call it?
The helm.
The helm. Thank you. Thank you, Captain Picard. And, I mean, that's where he stayed.
That's where he knew.
He knew. And he's like, I'm going down with the ship.
This is it.
I'm going to die.
Day 5.
Day 5.
So, something else that was interesting is that because of the temperature, I think it was,
The water?
the water and the air, there was this weird lighting thing going
Yeah.
on.
Yes.
What's that called?
You mean like the Northern Lights kind of situation?
No,
Like
there was some
refraction?
sort of like a refraction thing
Sure.
happening.
Yes.
So you couldn't. People were reporting things that they thought they were seeing, but they weren't actually there.
Sure.
They thought they were seeing like lights and things because of this weird like haze.
Reflections and refractions from the.
Yeah, I don't know. It has a scientific name. I'm gonna
Very
defer
eerie.
to you on that.
I don't know what it is. Somebody tell me. Go to facebook.com/SteamLabVT. Kyle, if you're listening, send a text. Unless you're working. Maybe he's hard at work. I don't know. Okay. So a little more than an hour after contact with the iceberg, a largely disorganized and haphazard evacuation began. So this is part of the story here.
Yes.
They never practiced an evacuation drill.
They were overconfident.
There was no practice. And each lifeboat was designed to hold 65 people. The first lifeboat that was lowered had only 28. 28 people in the first lifeboat. And this was the norm. During the confusion and the chaos and all this, everything that's going on, nearly every lifeboat would be launched with just like so underfilled. Some with only a handful of passengers. In compliance with the law of the sea, women and children boarded the boats first. Only when there were no women or children nearby were men permitted to board. Yet many of the victims were in fact women and children, which was the result of disorderly procedures that failed to get them to the boats in the first place.
I found it.
What?
It's called thermal inversion.
Okay. The spooky lights.
The refraction due to temperature. The
Yeah.
Titanic was sailing from Gulf Stream waters into frigid Labrador Current where the air column was cooling from the bottom up, creating a thermal inversion. Layers of cold air below layers of warm air. Extraordinarily high pressure kept the air free of fog.
Oh, wow.
And so this bends the light, and so it's like an optical illusion. And so that's why the lookouts couldn't see the icebergs until it was too late.
Could you imagine like being in that chaos? You would just feel helpless.
I mean, we know cold water. We know we dive
in a wetsuit.
Right? And
Can
these
you imagine
people,
just in your clothes? Like, you're going to die.
Oh, gosh.
Quickly. Like in less than an hour.
Cold.
You're going to die. So the Titanic exceeded the prediction of how long that this boat would stay afloat. It stayed afloat for 2 hours and 41 minutes, so nearly 3 hours. And during that time...
But no one showed up to help them.
Well, I mean, because people were confused. A couple of the ship, the SS Frankfurt, they didn't understand at all. They were like, what? What's going on? I mean, it was all like, there's no radios. It's all this wireless, Morse code. That's it.
And they never showed up because they could have come and given them their lifeboats.
Yeah.
Right?
It was such a tragedy. Men saw off their wives and children. Families were separated in confusion. And then there were a lot of selfless people who gave up their spots to remain with their loved ones. Like the Strausses, this rich couple. The woman was going to get on board and she said, nope, I'm not leaving my husband. You can give my spot to my maid. And she stayed on board.
It's very romantic.
Well, what's happening? Are you staying on the ship with me, honey, or are you getting on the boat?
Oh, I'm staying on the ship.
Okay, there you go. So here you go.
We'll give the spot to the maid.
Okay, we don't have a maid. We would be the maids. So the ship's most illustrious passengers each responded to the circumstances with some conduct that has become kind of like a big part of the Titanic legend. So Ismay, who is the White Star managing director, he was helping load some of the boats and later stepped onto a collapsible as it was being lowered. So although no women or children were in the vicinity when he abandoned ship, he would never live down surviving the disaster while so many others perished.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
He never lived it down.
Yeah.
He was looked at as just like a total, just horrible human being. Thomas Andrews, who's the Titanic's chief designer, he was last seen in the first class smoking room staring blankly at a painting of the ship on the wall. And I mean, he was never seen again. Astor deposited his wife, Madeline, into a lifeboat and remarking that she was pregnant, asked if he could accompany her. Refused entry, he managed to kiss her goodbye just before the boat was lowered away. So, I mean, some of these rich people, they were brave.
Yeah.
They were brave. So, although offered a seat on account of his age, Isidor Strauss refused any special consideration, and his wife, Ida, would not leave her husband behind. The couple retired to their cabin and perished together. Romantic. Benjamin Guggenheim and his valet returned to their rooms and changed into formal evening dress. Emerging onto the deck, he famously declared, "We are dressed in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen."
Wow. That's insane.
Maybe he had a couple of drinks.
He probably had a couple drinks at that point.
Yeah, a couple of brandies and was ready. The unsinkable Molly Brown helped load the boats and finally was forced into one of the last to leave. She implored its crewmen to turn back for survivors, but they refused, fearing they would be swamped by desperate people trying to escape the icy seas. Dude, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. But you mean they make a good point because, if someone's panicked in the water and you're going to flip the boat,
No, everybody's done.
and everyone's done.
This is true. And as a
get
lifeguard,
that.
I understand that part.
Yeah.
At the same time,
I know. It's cruel.
come on.
It's cruelty.
Yeah. So Titanic, nearly perpendicular, and with many of her lights still aglow, finally dove beneath the ocean surface at about 2:20 a.m. on April 15th. Throughout the morning, the Cunard's Carpathia, after receiving Titanic's distress call at midnight and steaming at full speed while dodging ice floes all night, rounded up all the lifeboats. They contained only 705 survivors.
Out of 3,000.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's crazy. And there's obviously an aftermath. So at least 5 separate boards of inquiry on both sides of the Atlantic conducted comprehensive hearings on Titanic's sinking, interviewing dozens of witnesses and consulting with maritime experts. Every conceivable subject was investigated, from the conduct of the officers and the crew to the construction of the ship. I mean, there was several things going on.
Right, it's
here.
a chain of failures.
Right. They were going too fast. The design was not as indestructible as they thought it was.
It was actually just flawed. I mean, it was a flawed design.
It was a flawed design.
Yeah. These were not separate compartments.
No, they were not.
They're not.
They couldn't be sealed off.
Yeah.
You couldn't. If those compartments could have been watertight sealed,
They would have been okay
You've
for
been
a
okay.
lot longer.
Oh, sure.
Which would have given other ships time to
time
come
to
and
get there.
respond. Yeah.
Right. Well, it has always been assumed that the ship sank as a reason of this gash on the bulkhead that made the compartments to flood. Various other theories have emerged over the decades, including that the ship's steel plates were too brittle for the near freezing Atlantic waters. Also, along with that, they had the fire. So you got a fire, you heated up the metal a ton, and then you cool it down because it's like the water's almost frozen. That's going to be a problem. You don't need to be a materials engineer to figure that
Figure
out.
that one out. Exactly.
Right. So the technological aspects of the catastrophe aside, Titanic's demise has taken on this deeper, mythic, popular culture thing. And kind of, as I talked about at the beginning, many view this tragedy as almost like a morality play on the dangers of people's reliability on human technology. And the Titanic's creators really believed that they had built this unsinkable ship that could not be defeated by the laws of nature, which is not possible. You can't fight Mother Nature. You can't fight Mother Nature. So that's pretty much the tale. There's more to it. There's so much more to discuss.
Right. Yeah. I'm just realizing though, I've never thought about this before, but in contrast to Titanic, leaving from a very similar area in England, was the Shackleton expedition.
Oh, yes.
Endurance.
Yes.
To the Wendell Sea with a small
Right.
crew with limited resources. I mean,
Sure.
they were well stocked.
Yes.
But
Pretty similar time period.
very similar time period, and they had every major catastrophe, including the boat being crushed by icebergs, right? And then they all survived. Not a single person perished.
Shackleton.
Shackleton, because it was excellent leadership.
What is the quote about Shackleton? There's so many.
There's so many.
There's a good
Yeah.
one that you've said before. Well, anyways, so just to give you a little teaser, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we are going to discuss the finding of the Titanic. We talked about the sinking of the Titanic, but now we're going to discuss the finding of the Titanic. And in a lot of ways, it's just as an interesting story as the sinking of the Titanic, which is definitely, it's a tragedy. I shouldn't say it's interesting.
Yeah.
But we'll be right back. Back to STEAM Lab. Science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Oh, I almost forgot. Sheila.
What?
Sheila. This is for your information. Sheila, for your information, in 1912, the Radio Act of Congress was created to regulate radio communication. It assigned 3- and 4-letter codes to radio stations. Sheila, for your information, the Republic of China was founded. For your information, in 1912, the Summer Olympics were held in Stockholm, Sweden. Sheila, for your information, the Girl Scouts of America was founded in Savannah, Georgia. For your information, Sheila, Fenway Park opened with a game between the Boston Red Sox, and the New York Yankees, who were then known as the Highlanders. And this has been for your information, Sheila.
That was a big year.
Dude.
1912.
There was more, too, but...
Holy moly. I mean, we had Girl Scouts, Olympics.
China.
Oh, wow.
Stuff was happening. We would have science in the news, but there's no Kyle here today, so he's busy. He'll be back. Will he be back?
He'll be back.
I'm just kidding. He'll be back in a couple of weeks. By the way, if you didn't know this already, this program is made possible in part by Burlington Telecom's Lifeline program, promoting a digitally inclusive community by helping Burlington residents afford the internet tools they need to reach their full potential. Learn more at burlingtontelecom.com. By the way, there's a lot of cool stuff going on around here.
Oh, what's going on?
In the Media Factory. All sorts of classes. Actually, the month is over. So all this stuff on this sheet
finished
is done.
But I'm sure there's some interesting stuff coming up in June.
Athena, do we have anything on for June? You know what you should do?
I do know that Channel 17's 35th anniversary party is coming up this Thursday.
This isn't Channel 17.
But it is part of the network.
It's
with
not
the
Channel
Media
17.
Factory.
We're RETN. We're not,
Excuse me, we are in partnership?
We're fine with Channel 17. I'm making a phony rivalry right now. Controversy creates cash. Yes, Channel 17. It's a big anniversary. Check it out.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Philip.
There are classes happening at the Media Factory. RETN, VCAM, 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP. Check it out. Get involved. Create some media. Have some fun. Learn some stuff. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Get involved. Search it. There's stuff on the interwebs. Search VCAM. Search whatever. Media Factory. You'll find stuff. So imagine, Sheila, imagine looking for something tiny. Imagine looking for something the size of an earring on top of something the size of a football field with no lights on. Maybe you got a flashlight. And that's what it would be like looking for the wreck of the Titanic in the middle of the huge Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the depths are incredible.
Yeah.
And the conditions are the worst.
What is it, in like 2,000 feet of water or
Yeah,
something?
I think so, yeah.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah. But the Britannic is shallower. Still deep.
How deep? 200 feet?
I think it's like 3.
I couldn't go there either.
I think it's 3-ish. A little bit, maybe a little bit more.
Probably shouldn't go there.
I think it's about 100 meters.
Don't go there unless you are tech certified.
Yeah. But people are diving it and exploring it.
People have died exploring it.
Yes, that as well.
So, but that's where we're talking about the finding of the Titanic. And people had been searching for the Titanic since it sank in 1912. And it was, before it was found, the most famous ship of all time, and explorers were kind of desperate to find it. Right? I mean, and why was the Titanic so famous? It's interesting. There's been all these other
Marketing.
disasters. I guess so. Right?
Because they made a big deal of it being unsinkable.
Yeah.
Right? The irony is so...
And it was such tragedy.
such tragedy.
such a
So
tragedy.
many lives lost.
Scientists, explorers, all these people competing to find the Titanic. And it took over 70 years. So finding the Titanic. So I want to take you back to 1985. Specifically, September 1st of 1985. And the man I'm talking about is Dr. Robert Ballard. The man couldn't sleep. He's in his bunk. And it was the early morning, probably like 1 or 2 in the morning. And the 43-year-old oceanographer is lying in his bunk aboard the research vessel known as the Nore, spelled Knoor. Ballard had led the ship to the North Atlantic in search of the long-lost wreck of the Titanic. So the Titanic is, about 400 miles off the coast of Newfoundland? Something like that.
I think so.
But despite combing the seafloor for more than a week, his team's camera-outfitted robot had yet to find anything other than miles of sand and sediment. It was a moonscape. Nothing to see. It's like diving Thompson's Point.
No one gets that reference, babe.
Anybody who scuba dives in Lake Champlain does. And, well, maybe. I don't know. Anyways. So, with only a few days left before his mission ended, basically before the funding ran out, he was beginning to worry that this iconic ship of dreams might never be found. Because this was like the big opportunity.
This was it. It was a lot of money. Big
Yeah.
money putting an ROV down at those depths.
Big money.
Yeah.
Big money. And it didn't come from him. It came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. So as Ballard tried to distract himself with a book, the Nore's cook, that rhymed that, appeared and said the on-duty watch team had called for him. Ballard pulled on his jumpsuit, took off his pajamas, ran to the ship's control van. And when he arrived, his colleagues replayed what had just appeared on their robot's live video feed of the seafloor. The footage was dim. It was grainy. I mean, this is 1985, so the cameras were probably not super great.
They weren't HD.
It was basically like a crummy, TV camera. But the metal
Probably
object...
Betamax.
Yeah, maybe something like that. But the metal object showed it was unmistakable. It was one of Titanic's boilers. This is where things get a little interesting.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Ballard and his crew, they erupted with cheers and applause. One of the crew members opened a bottle of champagne for a toast. But Suddenly, the mood darkened. Someone noticed that it was nearly 2:20 a.m. in the morning.
That was the time when this
The exact time the ocean liner had sunk and taken more than 1,500 passengers and crew members to their deaths. So the thought kind of hit Ballard and this crew just like they were all shocked. And he says, his quote, he was interviewed by 60 Minutes, "We were embarrassed that we were celebrating. And all of a sudden we realized that we should not be dancing on someone's grave."
Yeah.
It's a good dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's totally understandable that they would be celebrating after their hard work.
Sure.
But then it is very conscious of them
Right.
to say, wait a minute.
Yeah, we had to slow
This
down.
is where people just die.
Somebody died here.
Yeah.
We
Not
gotta-
just somebody.
Like some buddies. Like a lot of somebodies.
Yeah.
So, more than 73 years had passed since Titanic left on its doomed maiden voyage to New York. After the liner sank, would-be treasure hunters had proposed using everything from electromagnets to nylon balloons to raise it from the depths. Yeah, that's not going to work. The only problem was that no one knew where it was. Titanic had continued to drift after last reporting its location in a distress call, and it wasn't like they had GPS.
No.
I mean, this is old
Coordinates.
school. Well, coordinates based on stars, right?
Yeah.
And as
Sextants.
and as you said, they had a lot of like light stuff going on
Light
too.
refraction stuff going on.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Exactly. And so this left all these explorers with this search area that spanned hundreds of miles. Several missions had set off to look for this watery grave. All of them, including a 1977 expedition led by Ballard, had come home empty-handed. And this guy, this Dr. Ballard, this was his life's obsession, his life's work. So he had this mission in 1977, and they thought they were going to find it for sure. Couldn't find it. Came home empty-handed. So he wouldn't give up. So Ballard's second search attempt had been in the works since the early 80s. And basically, he kind of like, and I used to be in the military, but he kind of made a deal with the devil. He asked the U.S. Navy to fund the development of this invention that he had created. It's called Argo. And it kind of like, it looks like a sled. An unmanned.
ROV.
Yeah. And it's this sled
Yeah.
with a camera, and it was big and heavy, and
Super expensive to make.
yes, an unmanned camera sled that could be towed behind a surface ship at depths of up to 20,000 feet. So he had over-designed this thing, really. And the Navy was like, they kind of balked at footing the bill for the Titanic search. Like, the Navy didn't care about that.
Yeah. No, they don't care. I mean, for one, it wasn't their ship.
Well, partially that, but it's also like there's no military value.
No, right. But I mean, if it was their ship, they might go look.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But there's no military value to finding the Titanic. And, the Navy's not interested in that. But what they were interested in, and this didn't come out until probably about 15 years ago. It was unclassified. What they were interested in was using Ballard's new robot to survey the wrecks of the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion, which were two nuclear submarines that had been lost in the Atlantic in the 1960s.
Dun, dun, dun.
That was a little bit of a problem for the Navy. And so basically, he was like, okay, I'll do it. I will search for these submarines for you, and I'll find them. And he had unlimited time to really do that. But, we need a compromise. And so there was a bit of a compromise. If Ballard could successfully locate a map,
Map.
draw it out.
Yeah.
Right? So it's mapping here, which gets involved.
Right. Before ArcGIS was created,
For AutoCAD and, GPS and, he could use whatever time he had left to look for the Titanic after he found the two sunken submarines. Since the United States was still embroiled in the Cold War, I mean, this is serious, 1980s, still going on. The operation was kept top secret. Even crew members didn't know the extent of all this. And Ballard was given special instructions, and he was actually put on active duty as a naval officer. So he was in the Navy. Like, they literally like, well, we're going to make you a
Can't
captain.
pay you unless you're.
Right. You know, so
Can't
they were
give you
like,
all this information if you're
right.
out of here.
So we're going to just make you, you're going to be in the military. So, I mean, like, talk about sacrifice.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, I guess I'll make this deal. I'll become part of the U.S. Navy. But as far as the rest of the world was concerned, he was simply an oceanographer on a search for Titanic. It wasn't until the early 2000s that the mission's military agenda was fully declassified. So it was kind of like a clandestine expedition, right? So Ballard began his expedition by photographing the Thresher in the summer of '84. And then the following year, he and a team from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution returned to the Atlantic and tracked down the wreck of the Scorpion off the coast of the Azores. Now, what was nice about this situation is the U.S. Navy had a lot of information. You know, they had a ton of information that they could give them. You know, these submarines, they sunk in the 1960s.
Yeah.
So, you know.
They had a lot more technology.
They had a lot more
to track
technology.
them before they went down.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Ballard knew that the Navy missions
That's
were
way easier.
It's going to be a slam dunk
Yeah.
for this guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's like the Michael Jordan of
Yeah.
searching for stuff. So, Ballard knew the Navy mission would leave him with just a little time to seek out the Titanic. So, he actually asked a French research institute, and I forget the name of it, the French Research Institute for Exploration of the Sea, or IFREMER. It's literally what it is. So, and they partnered with him. So basically, he's just looking for some more funding,
Yeah.
more help.
Right. Yeah. More hands.
He's like, I'm working with the Navy. I'm working with the French. I'll work with the Soviets.
Woods Hole, who cares?
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's got a mission.
Yeah.
He's going to find the Titanic, period. And so the French research vessel Le Sorot began scouting the area where Titanic was believed to have sunk, using a technique known as mowing the lawn. Right. So Back and forth. So the expedition leader, Jean-Louis Michel, towed a side scan sonar system back and forth across the search zone in the hope of detecting large metal objects on the seafloor. I mean, this is a lot of fuel. And this is the
and
North,
in rough conditions.
North
I mean,
Atlantic.
let's not forget that. Like, this is
Yep.
the worst of the worst.
Yeah. And they trawled the
Totally
Atlantic for
unforgiving.
5 weeks.
Oh, God.
The sonar failed to uncover any promising leads. So the job of finding the Titanic fell directly onto Ballard and the crew of the Nore, who had just wrapped up their survey of the Scorpion. And he's like, all right,
Let's go for it.
let's go for it. And he was the right guy for the job. Ballard's military project left him with just 12 days to look for Titanic.
Wow.
But he had given him some ideas for a new search technique. So while photographing the Thresher and the Scorpion, he noticed that the current had carried small bits of wreckage from the ships as they fell to the seafloor, creating a long chain of debris. With this in mind, he decided not to search for the Titanic's hull. Instead, he would use Argo to scour the bottom for its much larger debris trail, which might stretch out as far as a mile.
Yeah.
Once he found it, he could use it to track down the ship itself. So it was a combination of sonar and using this search technique with this really wide pattern. So he knew what he was doing.
He wasn't mowing the lawn.
He wasn't mowing the lawn.
He was like spraying
Yes.
the
Yeah.
bottom.
Totally. We're going to talk about this some more.
I was gonna say we should take a break, or it's almost
Yeah. Well, and
it's
we're
half the hour.
we're going to be done with TV.
Yeah, we're gonna
It's
be
the
done
end
with
of it.
TV.
Yeah, no more TV. Oh, that's okay. That's all right. We'll play some music, and then we'll come back. We'll come back. And by the way, we're in the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM WBTV LP Burlington, streaming online at 993wbtv.org. And you're listening to STEAM Lab, Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics, which is an amazing show. You should get involved.
We
You
have
should go-
Engineer Phil and Scuba Sheila
Yeah, that's right.
talking about the Titanic.
We're talking about the Titanic. And we're going to be happy to see folks on VCAM next week.
Folks.
and see folks on Facebook and all sorts of other good stuff.
Happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I didn't even talk about the marathon. I'm totally going to have to do that. But we will see you in the next hour, which is just going to be straight up radio, where we can play some commercial music. And we'll see you next time in the Challenge Zone.